How far? Chapter 2. Handle this. It had to be at least a couple of weeks worth of moving shit from my grandparents' house to my house. We had to move their personal belongings, food, water, guns, ammo. You may be thinking, how hard can it be? You're moving things from one house to a house across the street. Maybe 50 feet or so? That's true, but it's a lot more complicated when you have to take into consideration that we're trying to move unseen by not only those things that are strong and fast, but also other survivors. See, we haven't heard from a lot of other people since the day that it started. We stayed inside as much as possible while I'm assuming everyone else scrambled to gather supplies from the local stores. That has to be the worst idea that you could possibly come up with during any kind of crisis. People get desperate when their families and lives are at stake. Desperate people are dangerous. At this point, I wouldn't even trust my best friend if I saw him. The only people that I trust with my life are the people right here, and my brother, of course. I think about him all the time. I'm asking myself, what would he do if he was here? How would he keep them safe? I just hope that he made it out. His town had a much bigger population than ours. I can only imagine how bad it is out there. We only see stragglers from time to time, but we let them pass so that we don't bring more here. I'm still not sure how they work, whether it's based on just sight or if they can smell us or something else. We had to watch a small group of them break into our neighbor's house the other day. There wasn't anything that we could do without putting all of us in danger. I think most of the people were out going to work when it all happened, but our neighborhood's full of old retired couples. I wish there was something that I could do, but I have my own to take care of. I don't have the means of helping them without risking my family. But back to our situation. After we moved everyone and everything important over here, we fortified the windows and doorways as best we could. We also took inventory of all of our food, ammo, and supplies. Ideally, if we rationed our food where we were hungry but not starving, we could last a long time. But morale's low, and with everything still being fresh, I figured that we could cut a little slack on rationing, but that brings us down to a few months of food max. As far as ammo goes, as long as we don't get into a big firefight or anything, we should be fine for any future scouting runs or stragglers that get too close. My uncle could have armed a small militia with his safe. I guess, in a way, he kinda did. Toiletries and medicine are another story, though. I sure as hell don't want to wipe with cloths and then clean and reuse them, so we have to leave and find something soon. My grandparents take a lot of medicine for their health, and they weren't planning on the fucking apocalypse happening, so we'll have to hit up a pharmacy and hope that they have what we need. God help us on that one, if he's even here anymore. Maybe one of those things got him too. I had given everyone job assignments as well as a rotation of one person on guard duty at all times. I had my uncle, a tall, burly Santa Claus look-alike, in charge of upkeeping the armory, or so we called it. He kept inventory on all weapons, ammo, and cleaned all the guns on a regular basis to minimize the chance of malfunctions. Sam and Hunter were in charge of making sure that the house was as secure as possible, and any chance to improve our defenses were taken to its full advantage. Needless to say, they had to get creative with limited supplies. On top of all of that, they were on the top of my list for any kind of mission to go outside of our makeshift compound, since they were the most physically fit and agile out of all of us. Sam was shorter than the rest of us, but he was used to manual labor and had a decent work ethic because of it. Hunter was the same way, but he was a lot taller and had been training to be a cop at the time of the outbreak, so he was a bit more nimble on his feet and could run like no other if he had to. My sister Annabelle and my cousin Ocean were best friends for life, even before we all moved in together. Both sarcastic and dark-humored. Oddly, it's like they were perfect for situations like this to lighten the mood. Both them and my mom were in charge of inventory and rationing of any and all consumables from real food to bubblegum and soda. They were also in charge of trying to collect as much clean water as possible since we didn't know how long the water would continue to flow through the house. I didn't want to stereotype the ladies, but it just seemed best suited for them. My grandparents were in charge of entertainment and taking care of our animals. We had 4 dogs and 6 cats. I figured it was the least physically straining, and my mother bounced back and forth from helping them and Annabelle and Ocean with their assignments. I took most of the guard shifts when I could so that everyone else could focus on their tasks. It was difficult to keep everyone busy. I figured if I could keep them focused, then they wouldn't spend as much time sulking about and thinking of their friends or other family out there. Anyways, the plan for now is to scout a few important places around town, i.e., places to loot, survivor holdouts, areas to avoid, etc. We had to go soon, too. I would rather prepare for the worst than have too many supplies and run out. I called for a meeting in the kitchen to figure out how to best execute our plan. Once everyone was at the table, I pulled out a makeshift paper map of our town. Okay, so I've marked some places that I'd like to take a look at, but that doesn't mean that we're going there or even going inside. Sometimes it's better to scout out a location beforehand and assess the situation before acting on it. That might help keep us safe rather than just barging in. Who knows what we'll find out there. Maybe it's not as bad as we think, but at the same time, maybe it's even worse. Any suggestions? Everyone stood around the table analyzing the map. My mother was the first to speak. I think our first priority is to find medicine for Grandma and Grandpa. They're running out and we don't know how long they can go without it before it impacts their health. I tried to reassure her. I understand that. That's why I've made a priority to mark any pharmacies or any kind of medical facility on the map, but there isn't a lot out here other than a couple of small places in the hospital, which really isn't an option right now. The hospital would have been flooded with those things after people first came into contact with them. I'd like to see what it's like out there for future reference, but right now it just doesn't seem promising. Everyone at the table slightly nodded and bowed their heads, maybe being reminded of how bad it could be out there. It might have discouraged them, but I felt that they deserved the truth. Anything else that we should be prioritizing? The room fell silent. Okay. I think our best course of action is to hit up the Walgreens and the Dillon's Pharmacy on this side of town. It's close, and I'm hoping that there aren't many of those things out there since they don't seem to float through here in groups bigger than 4 or 5. I'd also like to take a look at the National Guard building. I know it's farther in the opposite direction, but we might find out if there's any safe zones nearby or if the military's even out there. Any objections? Again, nothing but silence. I need a single volunteer to go with me. We won't be picking up a ton of supplies, so it makes sense to take some backpacks and a motorcycle in case we need to get in and out fast. For a couple moments, I thought that there wouldn't be a response again until Hunter volunteered. I thanked him, and then we began to prepare for our expedition beyond these walls for the first time in weeks. I was partially excited to find out what was out there, but at the same time it terrified me. I couldn't let the others see it, though. They needed me to keep my head up and show them that there was still hope. Since we were taking my motorcycle, there wasn't much room for long arms, so we both took a holster and a handgun. I chose a Glock 9mm. Versatile 17-round magazine just in case, and it had enough stopping power to leave one of those things dead in the tracks. Hunter went with a 1911 chambered in 45 rounds. It only holds 7 rounds plus 1 in the chamber, but it can blast a 2-inch hole in your chest and really make you think twice about being alive. I had to give him shit for it. Are you sure you want to take that one? Think you can handle it? He looked up at me with a blank expression on his face, and then Sam chimed in. Think you can handle this dick? We both spun around to him and started busting up laughing. It seemed almost inappropriate to laugh during a zombie apocalypse, but we all accepted that we were fucked up before any of this happened, so it continued. After we were ready, I hopped onto my motorcycle and started it up in the garage. It was a dual sport, so like halfway between a dirt bike and a street bike. I could maneuver it better than any car or my mom's motorcycle for sure. Hunter came out and jumped onto the back of it, at first tentative to hold onto my back, but ultimately deciding no homo. Everyone was huddled around the garage door watching us before we left. The second we're clear of the garage door, you slam it shut and push everything against it, understand? Sam nodded and pulled the door open just enough for us to fit under, and we were off. I was surprisingly calm riding down the street. I was still a little nervous, but nowhere near as scared as I thought I was going to be. Maybe it helped that I didn't see anyone once I reached the intersection at the end of our street. Well, there wasn't anyone as far as I could see. No people and none of those things. That really should have been the first sign that things were going a little too well, but I took it as a blessing. Once I got onto the main road, I could see that there were small groups of those things congregating in various locations, but nothing really to be worried about since they were a ways off down the road. I stopped in the intersection briefly to look around some more, just taking in the outdoors. Hunter tapped my shoulder. Something wrong? What do you see? I turned to look at him with the corner of my eye. Nothing, just enjoying our Sunday stroll. The pharmacies are right around the corner, not much farther. I sped off down the road, and as I pulled closer to the Walgreens and the Dillons, I could see several businesses that had smashed windows. I assumed that it was either from looters or those things trying to get to the people, but luckily it looked quiet. There were abandoned cars in the middle of the street, with the doors wide open, glass shattered and bloodstains all over the paneling and cloth seats. Of course, the first thought that comes to mind was, that could have been you. I quickly brushed off the thought, but the woman's eyes were still burned into my memory. I should probably see a therapist, if they're not all dead, that is. I pulled into the Walgreens parking lot, barren of any activity. There were a couple of cars near the back, maybe from the employees that had unfortunately shown up for work that day. The front doors looked like they were busted open by explosives or something. I mean, these doors were mangled to shit. Hunter hopped off the motorcycle. Well, looks like we don't have to knock. He started walking towards the door as I grabbed his backpack strap. Wait, should I leave it running just in case? It doesn't always start up on the first try. I gestured to the motorcycle, waiting for a response. Nah, it'll be fine. Look around. There isn't anything out here but a couple stray cats looking for breakfast. Besides, you should save the gas. Who knows if the pumps work anymore? He had a fair point. It looks safe enough around here, but I hadn't even thought about how it would get more gas. Most new cars have a ball in the funnel so that you can't siphon it, and I have no clue how to make the pumps work without electricity once it finally turns off. We slowly started walking towards the mangled doors. I pulled out my handgun. Again, it looked safe enough, but better to be extra safe than eaten. As we stepped over the busted glass and ruined metal doors, the crunch of the glass under our shoes sent chills up my spine. It didn't seem to bother Hunter, though. He continued walking slowly but nonchalantly towards the pharmacy counter. Hey, take this list in there and see if you can find the medication that we need. Bonus points for pain reducers and antibiotic. I'm going to make sure that the building's clear and meet you in there. Hunter nodded and jumped the counter and began rummaging through what wasn't already looted by previous occupants. Aisle by aisle, I cleared the building. Whoever broke in here before us really didn't leave much. Even the cards section seemed to have been glossed over. Why the fuck would someone take Hallmark cards? I whispered to myself. I had cleared the entire floor of the store with only the back rooms left. I inspected the door, looking at the small keypad above the door handle. Hopefully they don't keep what we need back there. At the same moment I finished that sentence, I heard Hunter yell from the other side of the store. Valente, come look at this! I immediately sprinted to the pharmacy counter and jumped over to the other side. When I finally found him, he was looking at a large blue door with a small window about head height. So, it looks like there's more medication in there, but it's locked. I was about to say something before he continued. That's not all. He turned towards me. There's someone in there. I rushed to the small window. What do you mean there's someone in there? As I got closer, I could see that there was the body of what looked like one of the employees that had locked herself in the small room. Her skin was starting to turn like a purplish green color, like she had been dead for a while. Oh fuck! I bent over gagging. I was gonna tell you not to look. Hunter patted my back and started looking around. There has to be some keys around here somewhere. I turned towards him with a confused look. You actually want to go in there? I bet it smells like shit. It's just been like serenading in there. He turned back towards me with a cool expression. Of course I don't want to go in there, but there's hardly anything left out here and I'm betting that that's where they keep the good stuff. I stood straight up. He was probably right, but I'm also slightly disturbed that he can be so calm with a rotting body right over there. How long have you been waiting for the apocalypse? He stood there for a few seconds thinking. Well, I'm 23 years old, so probably about 23 years. I kid you not, this motherfucker says this with a straight face. Normally I would laugh, but I think all things considered, I was more focused on trying to keep my breakfast down. As we walked around the pharmacy, it became clear that whatever keys we needed to open that door was probably on the woman's body inside there. I mean, we could just call it quits and go to Dylan's, or there was a door, I think, maybe the employee's office or whatever. Hunter spun around. Why didn't you say that before? We've been looking around for way too long already. I waited a few seconds just staring at him before answering. I would have checked it out, but you need a code to the keypad to even get in there, and we don't have anything that we could pry it open with. He immediately jumped back over the counter and started towards the direction of the office door. Once we got there, he inspected the door for a few seconds, looked at the lock on the door, and pulled out his 1911. Whoa, whoa, whoa! What the fuck are you doing? That's just gonna draw those things towards us. He sighed rather too heavily for my liking before turning back towards me. I'm gonna shoot the lock, go in there, and see if there's any keys. More than likely there's gonna be another set for that door. I mean, that made sense, but still the noise would bring those things here, and there's only one way in or out. I definitely don't want to end up like that poor girl in the room. So, if you're just gonna shoot this lock, why don't we shoot the lock on the door we actually want to get through first? I could tell he was starting to get annoyed with my questioning. I thought about that already. The pharmacy door looks like some kind of heavy-duty security door. This one looks a lot easier to get through, not as secure as that other one. I had to think it through for a minute, every second Hunter getting more impatient. Okay. Just wait a second before you shoot the lock, alright? I'll go to the front door and keep an eye out for any stragglers that might hear the shot. I'll keep you covered long enough for you to find the keys, unlock the door, and grab all the shit that looks useful, okay? If you can't fit it in our backpacks, just leave it and lock the door again. We'll take the keys and come back for the rest of it. I handed him my backpack. He nodded and I ran to the front door. As I was looking outside, I could see a few of those things wandering in the distance. I just hoped that they were far enough away that they wouldn't know which direction the shot came from. Several moments passed before I heard a deafening gunshot. I guess it's a good thing he took the .45. It seemed that we might have been in the clear. Some of the biters looked around trying to figure out where the noise came from, but they couldn't figure it out. I sat there quietly sighing in relief. I looked back to see how Hunter's progress was coming. I could barely see into the pharmacy from where I was, but I could definitely see that he got the door open. Fuck yes, I whispered. As my head swiveled back to the front door, I saw that we weren't as lucky as I thought. From some trees about 2 blocks away, I could see a small group of 3 of those fuckers that were running straight towards us like their pregnant wife sent them to get some fucking ice cream at 2:30 in the morning. Fuck, I said to myself as I sprinted towards Hunter. I almost have everything, just a couple more minutes. I swung my head back to the front door just as the biters ran inside. I pushed Hunter into the small medicine room and shut the door behind us. That's when the smell hit me. Oh my god! I keeled over and gagged again. Hunter picked himself up off the dead woman's body, brushing himself off and simultaneously keeling over and vomiting all over her. Once he composed himself and we were both covering our mouths and noses with our shirts, I turned to him quietly. There's 3 of them out there, as far as I could see. We might be able to take them out, but that might just bring more of them this way if we go out there guns blazing. Hunter, on the verge of puking again, managed a sentence. We can take them. I mean, you got a full mag and I've got 7 bullets left. By my count, we outnumber them 24-3. I gave him a stern look. Nice logic there, Chief, but they're a lot faster and stronger than us. If we miss, it might be over. I just got lucky with that one the first night. Every other time we shot them at a pretty good distance with more accurate guns. He pondered for a minute. I think we can still take him. I was defeated at this point. At least one of us was confident in this. Fuck it. They're wandering around and I can only see 2 of them, but the other one probably won't be far behind once we start shooting. You ready? Of course he nodded. Maybe he would rather just be eaten than stay in this room with a rotting corpse any longer. Either way, we didn't have much of an option here. I counted down from 3 on my fingers and opened the door and darted behind the counter. Hunter was right behind me and did the same. I peeked over the counter and saw the 2 biters patrolling around the store with no sign of the third. I came back down and signaled him that I would count down and then we'd start shooting. He nodded again and I counted on my fingers. On through, we both exploded above the counter and unloaded a few rounds at each of them until they dropped in their tracks. It would have been pretty impressive to watch if it hadn't been for the 3rd biter that was sneaking around to our side. When the 2 in front of us dropped, we looked at each other and almost started to celebrate. But then I watched as Hunter's face dropped all emotion and he pointed his handgun to my right. I flipped around just in time to see the 3rd biter lunge towards us. Hunter shot a couple rounds into his chest before his gun ran dry, and then it slammed me into a rack that was behind me. It flew straight past me and ran directly into Hunter, knocking him off his feet as well. Before either of us could react, the motherfucker lunged back towards Hunter and picked him up by his throat, lifting him a good foot in the air. I could barely hear it through gritted teeth and straining voice. Fuck you! Then Hunter shoved the knife right into its chin and up into its mouth. It must have not penetrated the skull because it dropped him, but it was still alive. Could it feel pain? Why did it stop even if that didn't kill it? It was the same with the woman in the truck. I raised my gun and unloaded the rest of my ammo into various body parts of the biter. Luckily, one of them must have found its mark because it eventually dropped to the ground like a sack of potatoes. We both just sat there for a minute, Hunter grasping his already bruising neck, and myself holding my chest. When it slammed me into the rack that I was currently still laying on, I must have broken a rib or 2. After we caught our breath, we picked ourselves up and grabbed the backpacks full of various medications and started towards the front door. I was expecting an army of the dead outside just waiting to come careening towards us to tear us apart from all the noise of the guns, but what we saw instead was a cat. Yes, a cat. Just sitting there looking at us. Like, what the hell is wrong with you two? You look like shit. Thanks, asshole. I turned back to Hunter. So you think you're still up for checking out the National Guard building? And of course, once again, he nodded. If you think you can handle it. I was still slightly limping towards the motorcycle. I hopped up and started it with a couple turns of the engine and turned back to Hunter. Handle this dick. I'd like to thank you guys for watching, or rather listening to the second chapter of my book, How Far? I know that the first chapter that I uploaded had some audio issues. I think the issue was that I didn't properly compress the audio before adding the music to it in the background, and then I had already gotten too far into the process of editing and trying to get it uploaded before I realized. So call me lazy if you want, but I didn't want to go back and redo it all. So just bear with it. I might end up doing it, redoing it rather, sometime in the future. But I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will try to do like a daily upload schedule for chapters. We'll see how it goes, how much free time I have. But thank you so much, and I will see you guys next time.